Let's get to it. Let's welcome Joe Zagorski back to Philly Pressbox Radio. Joe, welcome back.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I'm glad to be back. Hope you guys all are, before I forget, hope you both have a great and safe and happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you, Joe. Welcome back, my friend. We will talk lots about the 1970s NFL because you wrote a book about the 1970s pro football. You also do a Facebook page related to that. But let's talk a little current day NFL first. And let's start with this. How much do you get to see of the Eagles these days? You're in Tennessee. And what are your impressions of the 9-2 Birds?
Well, I tell you, you get to see pretty much if you have the NFL television packages. And I can tell you, I don't know why the New York Giants let go of Saquon Barkley because premium running backs in the NFL throughout time are hard to come by. And when you get one who's as good as he is, you do everything you can to keep him. Now, I don't know why the Giants decided not to keep him, but their loss is Philly's gain. I will say one thing. Philadelphia's front office, they know what they're doing. They're movers and shakers. They don't stay stagnant. They make moves. Anything they can do to help their team win, they're going to do it. And that's the kind of front office that you need if you want to stay a winning franchise.
Yeah, you're right. And, I guess with Saquon, with the Giants, it just came down to money. And if they weren't willing to pony up and they didn't think he would go to the Eagles, and Howie Roseman and them guys jumped right on it. And as you say, Giants lost his Eagles game, that's for sure. But how about the domination of the offensive line and the defense, both? Just total control of that game against a pretty good Rams team with a real good passing game. They had nothing for the Eagles.
That pass rush of the Eagles was phenomenal. And defense wins championships. I hate to use so many cliches, but it's true. If you're going to hold a strong offensive team down to just a couple of touchdowns a game in this pass-happy league, you're going to be doing a lot. You're going to get a lot more W's. And I think Eagles fans have to be feeling pretty good right now about the state of their team.
Yeah, for sure. Bill and I will make our predictions later, but what's your sense about this Sunday? Big game in Baltimore, the Eagles and Ravens, a battle of the birds down there.
I think the Eagles win it, and I don't think it's going to be that close.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not people don't use my words because I've been wrong a lot. But I'm telling you, I think the Eagles are really getting better at the right time. I can see them playing Detroit in the conference championship game. And that's going to be must-see television if that happens. It's going to be a heck of a game.
My big concern with this game, as well as any of them down the stretch here, I think to expect this team to finish 15-2 might be asking for a lot. You'd have to run the rest of the games. They're playing good enough, but this is a tough league, tough to win every week. And
you're not kidding. You had mentioned to me earlier about the book that I'm currently writing on former Hall of Fame Miami Dolphins offensive guard Larry Little, and I talked to him just a couple of weeks ago, and I said, Mr. Little, the Kansas City Chiefs look like they might actually, tie your undefeated record, and he said bluntly, no, they won't. and the very next day they lost.
Right.
So there you go. I mean, it is hard to win and run the table, the Dolphins are the only team that did it in 72. No other team's been able to, stay perfect. You're going to have maybe 2 or 3 lost teams fighting for the Super Bowl. I think there might be some dark horses, some teams that you don't really think about that might get close to it, but I don't see anybody really beating the Chiefs in the AFC, and I think the Eagles and the Lions will be the 2 top teams in the NFC. That's my take.
We may get back to current NFL talk a little bit later on, but when we had you on 3 months ago, Joe, we focused on your new Bill Bradley biography, of course. You got it right there. I had a hunch you might. It is available for sale these days. You can tell us where in just a bit. But about 8 years ago, you wrote and published a book called The NFL in the 1970s, which had the subtitle, Pro Football's Most Important Decade. Why was it football's most important decade, Joe?
Well, I think for a lot of reasons. For one thing, we still talk about the 1970s in this day and age. If you're talking about the beginning of Monday Night Football, you're talking the 1970s. If you're talking famous events in the sport, like the Immaculate Reception, the Hail Mary Pass, Miami's undefeated season, you're talking the 1970s. And then, of course, the players. I mean, you can't say people's names like Joe Namath, Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, O.J. Simpson. Those names are all from the 70s, and they're household names. We're talking 5 decades later. Joe Namath is still doing commercials.
Yeah.
He's always guaranteeing me something on those commercials, though. But, there's many reasons why the 70s, I think, was the most important decade. And it was also important for a lot of other reasons, too. There were 2 player strikes in the 1970s. We started to see heads butting between owners and players and management. And that's become much more, ingrained as the years have gone by since then.
Yeah, and I think too, and you know this better than me, Joe, from the date standpoint, but the whole TV started to pick up then, and stars were being born, and you had that must-see TV, Monday Night Football being one of them, and yep. I think the popularity really took off, which our fathers were starting to watch, we were watching, and then our kids were watching, and boom, here we go, it's taken off.
Yeah, and this invention called YouTube, where people can go back and watch different. It's incredible. I mean, I've got friends that show their kids what they grew up watching, and they get hooked on it. So I'm surprised by the growth of that book that I wrote on the 1970s. It's sold more than any of the other books that I've written. And I'm very pleased with it, and I'm glad that people still it's over 440 pages, so there's a lot to read there, and nobody can read it in one sitting. Trust me. So,
Joe, I'm going to put up a photo of the 1970s all-decade team, and if you look closely, you'll see that all but a handful of them are Hall of Famers. Look at the quarterbacks, Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, and Ken Stabler. Running backs, O.J. Simpson, Walter Payton, Earl Campbell, Franco Harris. What a list of players right there, man. Who are some of your favorites?
Oh, wow. Well, of course, I have to say Bill Bradley because that's the law, and I've got to say no. But I like a lot of players who played in that era. I like a lot of unsung players that never got anywhere near the Hall of Fame. Tony Galbraith of the Saints had a phenomenal year catching passes out of the backfield. And, of course, a fellow, a Penn Stater, Lydell Mitchell, he was a great player who didn't get near the Hall of Fame, but he was a great teammate of Franco Harris. And, of course, Franco Harris had a great career with the Steelers. The Steelers were the team of the decade by far, and they just were consistent winners. That 76 Steelers defense, 5 shutouts. Right. I mean, who's going to be able to equal that anytime again? I highly doubt it.
Yeah, so many great names on that list, and the thing about the player of a decade or team of a decade is, a guy like John Hanna, who might probably be right up there as possibly with the best lineman to ever play. Mm-hmm. But it depends on how his career fell, and that's why he ends up on second team because Larry Little played the whole decade possibly. So, yeah, such great names that cover both first and second team.
Oh, without a doubt. And, it's no slight to be a second team all-pro. The way I look at it, if you're on an all-pro team, you're on that team. regardless of if you start or not, And the same with the Pro Bowl. Larry Little told me, he was a backup Pro Bowl player for a couple of years, and then he became a starter, and then the guy that was the starter was his backup. So they were interchangeable almost.
Yeah.
If I put up a picture of some of the quarterbacks, it comes to me that if you wore number 12, you got a pretty good shot at being a great quarterback.
That's
4
right.
out of the 5 pictures right there. How about that?
Yeah.
That group won a lot of games, I can tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's look at the Super Bowls. You had Bradshaw won 4, Greasy won 2, Staubach won 2, Stabler won 1, and Fran Tarkenton didn't win any.
Lost 4, right?
But he's over 3. He was. Joe Cap played.
Joe Cap, right? Yep.
But still, all those guys are in the Hall of Fame, and they all have numbers that were very good, for that era. Now, that don't mix and match the 70s with 2024, because we're talking 2 different games. We're talking.
I was just going to lead to that, Joe. The things that Dick Butkus and some of those guys did on a daily basis in the NFL in the 70s, they would be suspended for in the 2020s just for the regular hits that they made. That was all part of the game. The game has certainly changed.
Oh, well, if you can watch a game in this day and age and you see, I think the other night with the Eagles, they hit the Rams quarterback, and it was like they got a penalty for that.
Right.
That? I mean, so maybe I'm too in tune with the 70s to really realize it, but the game has changed so much. There's 17 games now as opposed to there were 14 games at the start of the 1970s.
Right.
And it was a running game. The rules were different. You didn't have this until 1978 when the passing rules changed and you could throw the ball more without getting, massacred. A friend of mine who played for the Atlanta Falcons, Ken Burrow, told me one time in 74, he caught a touchdown pass against Mel Blount of the Steelers. And he said he jumped up for the ball, and by the time he landed on the ground, he felt like he was in a fight. I mean, so it's changed so much since then.
Hey, how'd you end up getting Rocky Bleier to write the foreword?
Oh, it's a long story, but I'll shorten it for you. I figured I wanted to get somebody who played most of the decade and who was, intelligent enough to write about that decade. And I first tried Roger Staubach, but his secretary got back to me and she told me that he was too busy. And then I tried Fran Tarkenton, and his secretary got back to me and said he was too busy. Then I tried Brent Musburger, CBS Sports, and I didn't hear back from him. And then I asked Rocky Bleier, and he said, yeah, sure, I'll write it. About 2 days after Rocky said yes, Brent Musburger calls me back. And he says, oh, I'm sorry I didn't get back in touch with you. And I said, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Musburger, but I already told Rocky Bleier that he could, write the foreword. And he goes, oh, that's a good choice. He's a good guy, And I said, okay. Well, at least I got a chance to talk to Brent Musburger for a few minutes. So.
Hey, Joe, one final question for me back from the 70s, and I'm biased here. And anybody that watches our show knows that Bill Bergey is my favorite Eagle of all time.
Wow.
How does Bill Bergey fit into the 70s as far as – I always thought because the Eagles stunk so bad that he was overlooked a lot, that if he were playing in that Jack Lambert spot, you'd be writing books about Bill Bergey.
I think Bill Bergey's been dealt a severe disservice by the NFL. He should have had a gold jacket, Hall of Fame jacket decades ago. You look at what he's been able to do when the Eagles were a bad team and how he was blocked by several players on every play, and yet he still stood out for so many years. Excellent player. There's no reason that I know of why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He deserves to have a bronze bust in Canton, and he should have had one decades ago.
Amen.
So believe it or not, we are just about out of time. But before we, have to end it, tell everybody how people can find your books on Bill Bradley and the NFL 1970s.
Okay, you can get them all at the Amazon website or the Barnes & Noble website, and they're available in both regular paperback or on electronic version, Kindle.
Cool.
So Amazon and Barnes & Noble, that's the place to get them. And they make great holiday presents because of their rectangular shape. They're easy to gift wrap.
There you go. There you go. Well, Joe, hey, we certainly appreciate you stopping by again. Let's do it again as the season comes to an end.
Sounds great. I'm enjoying it, and I think you Eagles fans better get ready for a wild ride because you might have another Lombardi to put in the trophy case in a few more months.
I hope you're right.
We're hoping, man.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, Joe.
Same to you guys. Take care of yourselves.